Hades is fucking incredible. Just a fantastic game. I don't know what else to say about it. It literally nails every aspect of what makes a game good. It's a roguelike, which I wasn't familiar with before I played this game, but now I'm a bit obsessed with the genre. The whole idea of repeating runs and getting new builds for each run, adapting to what the game throws at you to be better for the next run. It's all very fun, very addicting. With Hades in particular, the boon system I think is really cool. It's just it's the power up system, but the idea is you meet various different gods of Greek mythology, and each god gives you different buffs depending on what they are or what kind of skills they specialize in. With Zeus in particular, he gives you lightning, so he gives you lightning for your attacks, and he gives you lightning for your dash and things like that. Poseidon has a bunch of water-based skills, mainly used for knockback, and that's about it. Mainly used for knockback, but it's still really good. Athena's a very popular one because she has deflect, so when you dash, you can deflect projectiles. Very useful. Uh, it's all really good. Since each run is so different, you never get bored. That's just I never got bored. I went through Tartarus at least I don't know, like 30, 40 times. I never got bored even once. I tried out new weapons. There's 6 weapons in the game you could use. I tried out each weapon at least once, but I mostly stuck with the bow and the spear. Bow for long range, spear for like a long range melee weapon. So I liked keeping my distance between everything, and I felt like they had the best upgrades for me, personally, anyway. What I didn't expect is the quality of the story and the writing. I just expected to go in with the mindset of it's going to be a really fun game with a great combat system, but the dialogue between the characters is what really kept the repetitiveness from settling in during each run. Talking with the various gods and seeing how each of them think and seeing the relationships between each other, and I never got repeat dialogue at all, ever, which is very impressive considering I played this game a lot. It's just boosted by the great vocal performance as well. Like, the voice acting here is fantastic, from the main character Zagreus himself all the way to all the various gods. They're all great. Hades, obviously being a standout, has a fantastic voice. I really like Poseidon and Dionysus. Dionysus is a homie, and he had some of my favorite power-ups in the game. And I really like this dialogue with all the characters. They get brought to life when you see the character portraits while talking to them. Specifically, Chaos has probably my favorite art design out of any character ever in a video game. He's just fantastically drawn. He looks great, and there's a lot of little details about his portrait that really make him shine, even above the rest of the cast, which are all really well drawn and all, but Chaos really sticks out. So once you beat a run for the first time, you get to the end. Well, one, the game is not over, because to get the game's true ending, you got to beat it 10 times. But beside that, the real reason you want to keep coming back to beat it is the modifiers that appear once you beat the game once, that make it so there's more enemies that can appear, or more traps, or a limit on how long you can take to beat the each part of the run. There's a bunch of other modifiers too, but those are the ones that I did the most because I felt like they were the most manageable. But you can tune them all up to crazy amounts, so you can make an incredibly challenging run. The game honestly isn't too hard to beat the first time around once you get used to everything, but trying to beat it with as many modifiers as possible can be quite the challenge. I will say though, the extreme measures modifier, which turns all the boss fights into something different. The Hades boss fight in particular, in his final form, plays one of the best boss themes I've ever heard. And once you actually beat him in his final form, it's incredibly satisfying. And that fight in general is just really hyped up, or really hypes you up for a very memorable experience. Overall, the game is as perfect as a video game can be. There wasn't a single part of the game that I felt lacked in any way, shape, or form. I couldn't even nitpick anything if you were to ask me. It's hard to do that when the game is just so well done. The combat's great, the art direction's great, the music's great, everything is just so good. It just holds up. For all the AAA games that come out, either incomplete or yeah, just pretty much incomplete. It's nice to see a game like this, which was in beta for a long time, but the developers clearly took the advice of the people playing it, fixed the bugs, balanced the game, and it makes for one of the best games to come out in this in the beginning of this decade. So yeah, pretty great. Hollow Knight is another gem I happened to discover while browsing the PSN store, and I'm happy I did discover it because it has one of the best game worlds I've explored. The game takes place in a bug kingdom, and for whatever reason, the bug kingdom fell apart. It's in ruin, and the various bugs left in the kingdom are all corrupt, and they're pretty much just like zombies. They can't do anything but attack whatever they see in front of them. So your main goal of the game is to, get through these guys and eventually figure out why you're exploring this bug kingdom in the first place, what the purpose of your character is, because we don't really know too much about the knight that we control, and actually figure out what the Hollow Knight is. And while doing that, we get treated to some great platforming and some solid boss fights that really put this game as one of the better Metroidvanias. I played a decent amount, and Hollow Knight's definitely my favorite for the variety of reasons. The type platforming being one of the reasons why. Not only that, it has some neat tricks you can do, like hitting your sword off an enemy to gain extra height to release places that you wouldn't be able to get to until you unlock a certain ability. Again, they don't tell you how to do this, but they imply it based on how they place their enemies in a certain room or things like that. They always tease you with the idea that, hey, you could reach this room or this area, but unless you experiment a bit, you're not gonna figure out why, or rather how to get there. However, since it is a Metroidvania, there will be obstacles that eventually stop you from progressing, but it never really felt like I was restricted in any way. It always felt like I can go to a majority of places at one time. And when you do get a new item and you can explore a new area, that's a great part of Metroidvanias. It feels really good. So okay, now I can go here, here, and here, and explore this part of the map. But it never felt restricting, which is a huge plus for being a Metroidvania. Now, this game isn't totally unique because there have been games with a bug world as like the hub area, but nothing like this. This is clearly more dark, depressing. I don't even know if I've played a game with a bug world that is even close to this in terms of like atmosphere and even soundtrack. And speaking about the soundtrack, it's not going to get you super hyped up or anything like that, but in terms of creating a mood and really showcasing what the game has to offer, well, not so much showcasing, but highlighting the various places that you visit in the world, it does a fantastic job. With City of Tears being a highlight in the whole track, just absolutely beautiful. Just walking through the city when it's raining and has that soothing but sort of eerie track playing in the background is fantastic and really puts you immersed into what you're playing. One of the other game's major highlights is the boss fight. I'd say a majority of them are challenging but fair. I do know the DLC adds like a crazy boss rush mode, which I've heard people that have even beaten the game and beaten that mode say it's complete bullshit and it just shouldn't be even attempted because of how ridiculous it is. But I'd say the bosses in general are really cool, really unique. They all have a different fighting style, and it's just about knowing patterns and punishing them accordingly. I will say the final boss is a bit bullshit at times, but it still felt really good to finally beat the boss and beat the game. The game has challenging bosses, but it also has some challenging platforming segments, mainly the White Palace near the end of the game, which is pretty much the final platforming section before the final boss. Quite difficult. I died many times, and it felt like complete bullshit sometimes. But again, once you do it enough and recognize the various ways you need to jump through certain obstacles, it's not that bad. It can be rough though. Similar to Hades, I didn't expect much because I thought it was cheap. It was only $10. It looked kind of cool, so I thought, hey, why not? And I went away with a memorable experience. And now I'm very excited for its sequel, Silk Song, which is we don't know where the fuck it is, but one day it'll be here. Now, the last game I played out of all the games in this list is Amori. So I just played it and beat it like 2 weeks ago. So my opinion might change in the future, but for right now, I consider this game to be something really special. It shares some similarities to Undertale or Earthbound, mainly due to the style, the art style. I'm sure a lot of people would either think one of these two games when starting Amori up, especially with like random NPCs drawn completely differently. I'm sure a lot of people like me would compare that to Undertale, and just the art design in general, people would probably compare it to Earthbound. But it stands on its own due to how it implements real world trauma into the game and how it can affect someone. Not spoiling too much, but the game subtly and straightforwardly alludes to what's affecting our protagonist, and it makes playing through the game oddly more intense because the majority of the game takes place in like a fantasy dreamlike world where there's cute monsters and cute battle animations and you're with your friends and everything for the most part is happy most of the time, but there's every now and then there's certain scenes or certain things that appear in front of you that clearly reference something's up. And I love how the game like showcases that throughout playing it until it leads to the climax, which puts that right in the forefront, which is probably the best part of the damn game, because all those little parts throughout playing, those little scary or creepy parts, they culminate into a finale that I will not be forgetting anytime soon. Yeah, I mentioned the art style a bit earlier with its similarities to Earthbound. One thing this game does differently is that when you're in a battle and it shows the four characters, their four faces, it shows that they're slightly moving a bit, and you'd think that wouldn't add much, but that adds a little more life to the battle in general. The enemies are also moving, and I believe the background is moving sometimes as well. So it makes the turn-based combat, a little more enjoyable because the combat itself is not too complex. What it does use is what's called an emotion-based system. So it uses like happy, sad, angry, afraid. These emotions are similar to like type effects. So like water beats fire, fire beats grass, something like that. But it's a little more in depth where if you're sad, your defense is higher, but your speed's lower. Happy, your speed's higher, your luck's higher, but your hit rate's lower. And if you're angry, your attack's higher, but your defense is lower. And angry beats sad, sad beats happy, happy beats angry. It's not that simple due to the various ways the enemy or you can influence the emotion system. You can use attacks that make you happy, or you can use attacks that make the enemy angry, or the enemy could use an attack on you that changes your emotions, which makes the game more active and makes it so the player has to adapt more on the fly. This is highlighted probably the most in boss fights, since they can really change the emotions a couple levels in one way for you or for them. One boss in particular can go to like 3 stages of happy, which, her hit rate's super low, but if she gets a hit, it'll probably party wipe your team. So you have to figure out how to deal with that. It's not a particularly hard game, and there are some pretty strong strategies that you can use that will carry you throughout the game. Usually during boss fight, you do have to switch it up a bit though. But I thought the emotions and the way the enemy designs and the bosses, it never got stale. It's a relatively shorter game. I beat it around 20 hours. There is a lot of content though. Like I didn't do a lot of the side quests. And it has replayability as well. It has an extra route based on certain decisions you can make in the game. I haven't beat it yet. I'm currently doing it right now, but I haven't beaten it yet. I usually don't replay games like right after I beat them, but for this one, I wanted to get right back into it and see what the other route has in store. A bit of a warning though, this game has some pretty disturbing shit in it. I mean that was the appeal. That's kind of what got me into, or what wanted me to purchase this game, because I heard, yeah, it was a solid RPG. But if you go on Steam and look at some of the tags, one of them is psychological horror. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a game like Undertale or Doki Doki, where like, yeah, this is a fun game until it's not. But that's the appeal of it, and that's the strength of this game as well. It's the only game where the power of friendship actually works and makes sense. The dialogue comes off as believable and never feels forced, and it makes a majority of other JRPGs look bad. Uh, Most of them are forced and quite frankly terrible, but in this game it works really well because the trauma of the main character also affected the rest of his friends, and you can see that throughout playing the game, how they're all affected by it, because the event that caused the trauma in the main character happened 5 years before the game actually starts, and it affected each of the main character's friends and himself, of course, very differently. And it's really cool to see that fleshed out, so that by the end of the game, you're very satisfied with how everything turns out. Assuming you get the true ending, though. There are other endings that are, not as great and not as happy, but majority of people should get the true ending on their first playthrough if they just play the game uh, like you'd think you'd play an RPG. But I'm sure some people didn't, and sucks to be them. This game leaves a very powerful impression on the player once they've completed it, and that could be due to multiple things: by how the story ends, by the reveal of what actually happened, by some of the disturbing imagery. The whole game just makes for an engaging experience, and one I soon won't forget. Risk of Rain 2. This game is addicting as fuck, and I don't see myself um, not playing it anytime soon. Like, I will always come back to this game. Out of all the games on this list here so far, this is the one I will always come back to, just because of how addicting the loop is from starting a new run. It is similar to Hades, but Hades is more focused. It has a narrative that builds every time you complete a run, which is great, and it makes the game great and stand out on its own. But this is great in a different way, where you could start a new run, then switch a new character, and then that character plays completely differently, even more so differently than from like Hades, where you just switch weapons. In this game, you switch entire skill sets, and the various buffs you get are different. It's a roguelike, so that's how they work. I'm a big fan of the captain and loader personally. The captain because I don't know, I really like the way his shotgun works. How you charge it, it's like a little sniper, and up close it's a shotgun. I think that's really cool. He's got a little microbot buddy, which is neat. But the loader in general is like he's hard to use at first, but once you use him, he feels so damn good to play as. You would think he would have like the worst mobility out of everyone, but it turns out he has some of the best with how he uses his charge up dash punch and the grappling hook, especially if you get like two stocks of it. Like there was a buff that gives you two stocks of like the grappling hook. It's really great. You're just swinging like Tarzan, and you're punching people, and you do a shit ton of fucking damage. You have no range, but you do a shit ton of damage, and it's always fun when I play as him. The soundtrack for this game is handled kind of differently. Usually when you start out the first world or so, it's more of an atmospheric approach. It's just there in the background. You don't really notice it. But by the end of a run, the soundtracks or the songs that play during that are fucking amazing. It has some of the best guitar I've heard in a while, and just intensifies everything. It's just great. Unlike Hades, the game really doesn't have much of a story. You kind of just play through. But what's cool about it is that the world you explore, there's various details, and there's just various details about them that make me think about, oh, hey, this happened here, or what happened here. And the robots you play as make you wonder, where are they from? What are they doing? And while having all those little thoughts, I ended up getting to the final. Well, once I first beat one run of the game, you get to the final level, which really made me imagine and think about, what actually happened here. Like the architecture of the final level is insane. I've never seen a level design like this ever. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I mean, in this case, it's a great thing because I love getting to that level. Even though I usually don't beat the final boss there, the one time I did felt great, and even just getting to the final boss feels awesome. And the final boss himself, being what he is, it seems like he has a lot to do with how that world is designed and why that world even exists at all. Truly a great level. That's all I got. It's just a fantastic level. I didn't expect it at all. Based on the previous levels, I thought it'd be more fantasy-like, but no, it's this robotic, pure world. That's probably the best way to describe it. Which leads me to my some of my final thoughts about the game. It's just great. I highly recommend picking it up. I will say I did get it on PS4, and it runs surprisingly well. With how many enemies this like a roguelike like this could get on screen, it ran pretty damn well. It stayed at a pretty consistent frame rate. It's probably not the best though. Like if you can get it on PC, it'd be better to get it on PC. But the PS4 version isn't bad at all. I think it's usually $30, which isn't bad. Just wanted to make this video to showcase these smaller games. The ones that aren't AAA and have the budgeting and marketing, but how they still stood out due to them just being so good. Due to critical acclaim alone, these games have stood out, have fans, and have really made an impact on me and many others.